Hello, my lovely anatomist and physiologist, Michele Glass here. We are still talking about our brain coming out of our chapter 13, and we're ready to talk a little bit about the brainstem. Now, the brainstem is where we're going to see our unconscious level processing. So whenever we think about unconscious level processing, we should be thinking about the autonomic nervous system. So we can think about the brainstem as having nuclei and processing centers that would be involved in this controlling of the autonomic nervous system. Think about control of your guts, right? That's your smooth muscle and your cardiac muscle and your glands and your adipose tissue. We'll also see the job of the brainstem to relay information to both the cerebrum, which we've talked about already, and the cerebellum, which we'll talk about in our next video. Now, when we think about the structure of the brainstem, we just stopped talking about the brain, and we said you could think about it like a giant lollipop, right? Where the cerebrum is like the sucker part, maybe some portion of that diencephalon, but then you have a stick, and the stick would be the brainstem. And if we're looking at the top of the stick moving down, we would get the midbrain, and then the pons, and then the medulla oblongata. And the medulla oblongata becomes continuous with the spinal cord. When we look at the midbrain, what we see is that it's going to process visual and auditory information. And again, we're thinking about this at an unconscious sort of level of processing. So we'll see that this is going to be involved in what we call cranial reflexes. A reflex is kind of a hardwired automatic response. Hardwired maybe is okay description, maybe not. We learn some of these hardwiring as we go through life. Some are innate, meaning we're born with them, and some are kind of hardwiring that we learn. If you can learn something, you can also unlearn something, right? So we'll see that as well. So our cranial reflexes are going to be these kind of automatic responses that we see being processed from the brainstem level. That's why it's called cranial reflex. We'll also see that the midbrain helps to maintain consciousness. Helps to maintain consciousness. When we talk about the pons, we'll see its huge job is to connect the cerebellum to the brainstem. And this is, not only an anatomical connection, but this is also going to be a physiological connection. Some information is going to come up the brainstem to the pons and then get routed straight over to cerebellum, right? Some information is going to be generated at the cerebellum, come to the pons, and then down, either out the cranial nerves off the brainstem or down into the spinal cord and off the spinal nerves. We'll see here that we have respiratory control centers. We actually have 3 levels of respiratory control centers, and so this is one of those levels. We also can control respirations consciously. So if you can control something consciously, what part of the brain would that be coming from? It's the cerebrum, right? That's our conscious level processing. So we can control our respirations conscious level from the cerebrum. We can control it also from these respiratory centers in the pons. And we can control respirations at the medulla oblongata as well. So we can talk about the medulla as regulating heart rate, which I'll abbreviate big H, big R. We can see the medulla oblongata involved in regulating blood pressure, which I'll abbreviate big B, big P. It's going to help regulate digestion. And then, as we've just mentioned, respirations as well. This is like the most primitive control of your respirations right here. And another job of the medulla oblongata is to send sensory information up to the thalamus. Because remember, any sensory information coming into the spinal cord brainstem makes its way to the thalamus, everything except olfaction, of course, and then the thalamus directs it to those different parts of the cerebrum. So let's take a look at our brainstem picture that we already looked at in previous video. So here we have that picture from our model in the lab. And we already had labeled the brainstem portion. And here, let's from the top label the midbrain. You have this big sort of bulging area kind of in the center of the brainstem. That's the pons. And then at the very bottom, you have the medulla oblongata. And then notice down here, this actually is going to become the spinal cord. That was our anterior view. We can do the same thing on our posterior view. So right here, I'm going to draw an arrow to the midbrain. Then we have the pons kind of centrally located. And then we have the medulla oblongata at the base of the brainstem becoming continuous with the spinal cord. Now notice on the brainstem, you do have these I'm gonna grab like this pink color. You do have these set of bulges. You have two kind of bulges on the top and two kind of bulges on the bottom. So these are going to be involved in those cranial reflexes. The two on the top are called superior colliculi would be the plural form of the word. A superior colliculus would just be one. And then the two on the bottom are referred to as the inferior colliculi. And again, these are part of those cranial reflexes. So the ones on the top are going to help like orient your eyes with sound. So if you're in your garden and you hear a lovely bird sound and you're like, I really need to know which bird makes that gorgeous sound. And so you listen and then you coordinate your eyes to locate mockingbird sitting on the power line. And now you know, oh, that's mockingbird making that lovely sound, right? With the inferior colliculi, this is going to be connected more to an auditory pathway. This is a more responding to sound. So in this case, this is more like you hear a loud sound or disturbing sound and you move your head or your body in that direction in order to see what that is, or you're responding in some way to that auditory pathway. So superior colliculi, we have here describing orienting eyes with sound, but we can also think about this as more of a visual pathway, I think, in the sense of another description I've read about superior colliculi is, this is when you get that flash of something in your peripheral vision, and then you need to turn your head in order to see what that is. So again, the idea of a cranial reflex is just you're responding, and all that processing is happening right here at this unconscious level rather than the conscious level. All right, y'all, that is your brainstem. Stay tuned for your cerebellum. And as always, take care of yourselves and each other.